All right.
All right.
I want a medal, a trophy, I want an award, I want everything for that.
Coffee. All I want to do is put some vodka in here now.
All right, I'm gonna hang up the phone part, so we got you on now.
There we go.
All right, victory.
Okay,
Great
now,
stuff, guys. Great stuff. Teamwork.
you got to make sure. See, I'm not hearing you now.
No, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Randy, what's going on, Randy?
Hey, how are you guys?
We're
What's
good.
good, man? What's good?
Excellent.
It's going to be all worth it, Randy. It's going to be all worth it.
Oh my
Absolutely.
God! But
Absolutely.
I didn't even see those little the two little lines. There were lines like this, and in one there was a little circle over here, and the other one the circle was over here. I hadn't seen them before, so when I pressed on it, that's when it gave me the access to open up the microphone and camera. Here we are.
We here, baby.
Yes, sir.
Brilliant. So that Stormy B man out of Chicago, I told you about him yesterday.
Okay, before we even go, Story, my man, do you know where Deerfield is?
Absolutely.
That's where my married daughter lives. Her name is Allie, and she's there with her husband and two kids in Deerfield. So I'm out there, not even as much as I'd like, but I do get out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where the Chicago Bears used to have their training facility.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Deerfield.
Deerfield, that's what's up, man.
Yeah, we go.
So let's get to it. Let's get to it, man. Let's talk some boxing.
Now, Randy, I had a question that I wanted to ask. I still hold fast to it while we were going through this process. Speaking about Bone Crusher and Tyson, I was asking, when you couldn't hear me, recount that last 30 seconds of the 12th round between Bone and Mike and give us your assessment of what you were able to witness.
Well, the referee was Mills Lane. And I really believe that Mills was one of the best refs of all time. But in this particular fight, right from the get-go, and Mills and I were friends for years. After the fight, I told him, Mills, this wasn't one of your best efforts. And he said, why do you say that? I said, right from the get-go, Tyson realized that he had met his match in strength from the very first round. Nobody was really stronger physically than Bone Crusher Smith. And in the very first round, Tyson butted Bone Crusher and gave a little cut around the eye. He threw a couple of elbows, a shoulder here and there, and it really intimidated Bone Crusher because Mills Lane did nothing about it. And he was saying to himself, oh my God, he's going to let Mike do anything he wants to do. And you know, let's be real here. Tyson was a fighter in every sense of the word. And if he had to put a head in there, an elbow in there, a shoulder in there, he would do it. And the only guy that didn't work with was Evander Holyfield, who gave it back to him in their first fight to the point where he actually beat Tyson at his own game. And then Tyson was so pissed off that happened to him in that fight. Then, of course, we know what happened in the second fight. But Evander had told me before that fight, if he thinks he's going to come in here and give me his rough stuff, I'm going to give it right back to him again. And then, of course, we know what happened. But with Bone Crusher, he became Bone Hugger that night. And every time Tyson got close to him, Bone Crusher would wrap him up. And it was 12 rounds of just frustrating heavyweight fight. until finally, about the final minute, 45 seconds, something like that, Bone Crusher figured, you know what? Fight's just about over. I'm going to let a shot go. And he launched a shot, and Tyson felt it. And after the fight, Tyson said, had you done that earlier, we could have had a real fight.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an interesting situation because the shot was a shot that Mike would always get hit with too. And this is the other thing that many people didn't pick up on about Mike Tyson. He knocked no one out after the 7th round.
Right.
When he fought Jose Ribalta, referee Rudy Battle stopped the fight. And Battle had gone down a few times and got up. Not Battle, but Ribalta had gone down a few times and got up and kept fighting. So when Battle jumped in and stopped the fight, you know, Ribalta was like, "What you doing? I'm still fighting. I'm still in this thing." So Tyson never knocked anyone out after 7 rounds.
Right. And
in the 7th round of his last knockout, that was against Pinklin Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Well, I worked 2 other fights against Tyson, and you'll remember both of them. One was Francois Botha.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, somebody from the Tyson camp called me up 2 days before the fight. It was 2 days before the fight, and they said Mike Tyson plans on fighting Botha dirty early in the fight. When he gets him against the ropes at some point, he's going to take his arm and try to dislocate his elbow.
Yes.
And if you remember that, there was a brawl that broke out, and I'm sitting on the floor. When the brawl broke out, I started up in the ring, and then I said, "What are you, nuts? What are you going up in the ring for? I ain't going up there." Well, I actually spoke to Mark Ratner, who is the executive director of the Nevada Commission. I said, I got it on good notice that Tyson is going to try something to Botha. If he does, do I have your permission to retaliate? He said, yes, I will give you 1 shot. And I'm going to tell referee Richard Steele there's 1 shot. And sure enough, I think it was in the 2nd or 3rd round, Tyson did exactly what I heard he was going to do. He got him in a clinch and then took his arm and basically tried to, break his elbow.
Yeah, because it was similar to the situation that Gabriel Ruelas ended up with a broken elbow. Remember when the guy caught him in the clinch and turned it and dislocated his elbow, broke his elbow?
So
it was a similar situation.
And then, all hell broke loose, and I'm sitting at ringside. I look across the ring at Mark Ratner, and he's sitting there he's got his head down, shaking his head. He looks across the ring at me, and he holds up 1 finger, meaning that's your 1 shot.
It is.
But Botha wasn't going to be intimidated.
Right.
And then he went into the 5th round. We said, your object here is going to be to take Tyson deep as you can. Survive all these rounds. I don't care if you have to hold him, move on him, take him deep, because he's not in the best of shape. And you are in great shape. So get through those 5-6 rounds, make him work on the inside. But it was going so easy for Botha that he started in close. He started calling Tyson all kind of names. And then in the 5th round, he called Tyson a few choice names, drops his hands. Tyson lets go maybe the best right hand he ever launched, knocks Botha down, who gets up on rubbery legs. They stop the fight. And in the dressing room, Botha said to me, "Randy, why did they stop the fight?" And I said, his nickname was Buffalo. I said,
White Buffalo. Yeah.
You got knocked down. You got up drunk, man. He goes, I didn't get knocked down.
Oh!
we all looked at each other in the dressing room. Sterling McPherson, who worked his corner, both his father, we all looked at each other. We said, see, that's how hard you got hit. You don't even remember going down. Now, the other guy that I work with against Tyson, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I worked with Bruce Seldon. At the time, I was the director of boxing at the Foxwoods Casino. And Bruce Seldon trained with us at Foxwoods for about a month. We put him up in this great suite. He was eating just great foods. He had everything that you could possibly want. And one night, it was just me and Seldon at dinner. It was about a week before the fight, and we were about to leave about 2 days later for Vegas. And I said, Bruce, I want to just inform you about something, but he's going to try to drop a whole bunch of mental intimidation on you. He looked at me, he goes, mental intimidation? He said, look at me. And I'm watching that right hand. Geez, that Tyson right hand. Botha, you could have been champ if you just took him deep. Oh, Francois. So Seldon was wearing a large Foxwood shirt. I'm telling you, if I put the shirt on, it would be like a nightgown. It would be down to my ankles. He was ripping out of it, just exploding out of this thing. He stood up at the table. He said, look at me. And he flexes. He said, do I look like I could be intimidated? And I'm looking at him. He said, listen, early in my life, I was in prison. I had the biggest, baddest MFs you could ever think of. On my first week there, they approached me. I cracked one guy's head wide open, and I split another guy's face wide open. I said, don't ever come around here and try that again. He said, everybody left me alone after that. He said, now, do you think little Mike can intimidate me? Now, if you were sitting there, what would you be thinking at this point? I mean, I've been around everybody from Sonny Liston to Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, and George Foreman. I know about intimidation and whatnot. And I know some guys can be intimidated, some guys can't. The mental game works with some guys. Well, I was sure on the flight going out to Vegas, there is no way Bruce Seldon is going to be intimidated. Well, here comes the weigh-in. And that night, Seldon, about 6'3", weighs in. He weighs in about 230, stands on the side of the scale, and I'm standing on his left. Tyson gets on the scale, and even on the scale, wasn't as big as Seldon. And they weigh Tyson in around 219 and a half, whatever. And then he turns to Bruce Seldon. And I will tell you exactly, if you got to beat me here, get ready. He looked Seldon in the eyes, and he said, I'm going to fuck you up. Well, and then Bruce stood there, and he turned as white as fallen snow. I slapped him on his shoulder, and I said, Bruce, give it back to him. And he turned to me, he goes, Randy, I'm going to make your boy my bitch. I'm telling you, I thought Bruce was going to throw up. I looked next to me, Mark Ratner, again, the head of the Nevada Commission. He had just done the weigh-in. We locked eyes. We looked right at each other. and I could read his mind. He could read my mind. We knew what just happened. Bruce Seldon quit.
Fell apart. He fell apart.
Right there. Now, we were supposed to go out to dinner. It was going to be me and Bruce, his two managers, and 2 or 3 of the sparring partners. Bruce said, I want to go back to my room. Oh, and then they did the face-off, and they stared at each other. Tyson looked right into Bruce's eyes. Bruce did not look at him. Bruce was looking over his shoulder.
Oh, no.
Wouldn't look at him. I knew then and there that Bruce had just quit. Then he wanted to go to his room, get the dinner. And I said to his managers, you got one hell of a job to do tonight because Bruce just quit.
Oh.
Now, the next night, Richard Steele was the referee for that one. If you could ever play a YouTube back, you see the 2 guys get in a ring. And I'm sitting between Mark Ratner. It was Mark, me, and the then governor of Nevada, Governor Brown. It was the 3 of us. During the Star Spangled Banner, Tyson was pacing back and forth. You know, that caged lion in him. Back and forth. Bruce puts his hand over his heart and starts to lip sync the Star Spangled Banner, but got so intimidated at seeing Tyson in front of him that he turned around, gave Tyson his back as he faced the audience, and continued to lip sync the Star Spangled Banner. You know, we just watch him going. And then with that, when he turned around, Mark Ratner, we're standing up, you know, we've got our hands over our hearts and everything. And Mark Ratner, like a ventriloquist, kept his mouth closed and he goes, it's over. And I went, mm-hmm. Now, at that moment, if I could have gotten on the phone and had one of my friends go bet the farm on Tyson in the first round, I would have done it. Oh. Now, the governor goes, he hears me and Mark going back and forth. The governor, during the Star Spangled Banner, is in, what's going on, guys? And I said, like a ventriloquist, hold on one second, I'll tell you in a moment. Oh. And then, and the home of the brave, yeah. And they take the, with that, the governor said, what's going on? I said, my guy just quit. This fight's over in 1 round. Now, fight's over, bing, bing, bing. And just like we said, first round, I ran into Tyson's dressing room and I give him a hug and he shakes my hand. He goes, Randy, what happened to your fighter? And I said, Mike, I tried to tell him that the intimidation was coming, but he just wouldn't listen. He said, I was certain that you would convince him that this is what I do. 2 seconds later, into the dressing room walks Tupac Shakur. Mm-hmm. He hugs Mike. Mike introduces him to me. He said, man, your guy folded up. I said, Tupac, he was completely, totally intimidated. He gives Mike a hug. He gives me a hug, walks out, and just a little while later, he was gunned down.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the damn Bruce Seldon fight.
Yeah, yep. That was the night.
Yep.
So, I was probably one of the last guys to give Tupac a hug.
Yeah. Man.
But, those are my few stories about me and Mike Tyson.
Man. Bruce, you know, you watch that, physically he had tools, but mentally he was gone.
Now, so get this. Next Saturday night, I'm going to be announcing a fight card from Atlantic City on DAZN.
Yeah,
and in one of the 4-round bouts, it's going to be the son of Bruce Seldon, who's about 4-0 now. Bruce Seldon Jr., a heavyweight, built like his father, not quite as tall, maybe about 6'1.5", 6'2", about 230, shredded, but no amateur experience. So they're just kind of building him now and don't expect to see anything from him in the next year or so. We'll see if he can fight. But, I sat with him for a while and I told him, that your dad and I have been friends. Bruce rarely comes out. He still lives in the Atlantic City area, but for a couple of years after that, they stoned his house. He would have been better off just going out, throwing punches, getting knocked out, going out on his shield than doing what he did.
A lot of people thought he just threw the damn fight.
Yeah, a lot of people. To this day, fight fans say to me, the only fight that I think really was fixed was the Bruce Seldon. I worked with him. Believe me, it was not fixed. He was scared to death. And until you've been in there, you don't know what it is, what fear really is.
Well, let me add something to this tale here, Randy, because Bruce showed that streak 2 other times before he even saw Mike Tyson. One was against Oliver McCall.
Yes.
And it came out of him then. The second time was against Riddick Bowe. And when I saw it with Oliver McCall, whom he initially started the fight out very well.
Right.
He was jabbing McCall and, doing what he does, because athletically, Seldon was one of the best heavyweights of that era, with a combination of speed, power, and athleticism. Plus, he had a jab that was unbelievable. But there was something going on up here with him. I never met the man personally or whatever, but I could tell because I've worked with fighters in the gym. I've trained fighters myself. Yeah. But I could tell that there was something going on upstairs. When he fought McCall, and at that time, McCall's reputation was he was Tyson's chief sparring partner and really wanted a fight with Mike, and Mike wouldn't give him a fight because he was handling Mike so well in the gym. But against McCall, once he realized that McCall wasn't going anywhere, he seemed to shrink mentally, psychologically. And he started moving around and just kind of doing some goofy stuff. And he just gave it up to McCall. In a fight that he could have won on points, he wasn't going to knock Oliver out.
Right.
And then again against Riddick Bowe, they had this whole back and forth. Remember that they were going back and forth, chattering, talking a lot of crap to each other and everything. And I thought he had a chance against Bowe because he could box. He comes out, he jabs Bowe, hits him with a great combination, boom, boom, boom. And Bowe took the shots because they were shocking. But if you go back and you watch the fight, you'll see Bowe nod his head like, okay. But that wasn't like, okay, bring it on. It was like, okay, I think I better watch out for this guy. And Bowe got serious. And he caught him with some shots, caught him with that uppercut and everything. And the rest is history. Seldon, when he went down the first time, he banged his hand on the canvas. Then he pops up like, I'm okay, I'm good. And then again, he got dropped again, and that was that. 3 knockdowns, he was out. But the thing about it was, he gave up before the going got good. So against Mike Tyson, it became much easier. When they talk about guys quitting, it gets easier and easier. And with Mike, he quit at the scales, according to what you were able to share with us.
Yeah.
And what he doesn't know is this. Mike might have been more afraid of him than he was of Mike.
Mike,
I'm going to tell you why.
Mike actually.
Do you remember what Bruce did to Tony Tucker?
Yeah, it was bad.
Nobody, including Lennox Lewis, beat the crap out of Tony Tucker like Bruce Seldon did. He beat the crap out of Tony Tucker, who gave Mike Tyson a very tough go for that IBF title. I mean, I'm sorry, not the I. Yeah, it was the IBF. He got off of him, and it was a heck of a fight. But when I saw Bruce Seldon beat Tony Tucker, I was like, he finally getting it together, because the Bo and McCall fights had happened before that. So I thought he had finally gotten it together and everything.
Yeah.
But man, he fell apart against Mike Tyson. He really did.
I wish you were at that dinner with me at Foxwoods to hear what I heard when the way he just stood up and said, "Do I look like I can be intimidated?" I mean, you would have sat there and said, "No, no."
Wow.
Yeah, man, that's hilarious, man. The 90s, a lot of awesome matchups when Mike got out of prison. There was a lot of things I wanted to see him do. I will never know the business behind it. I can only speculate. Everybody wanted to see, well, me personally, I want to see him against the David Tuas and the Ike Ibeabuchis, things of that nature. I think at that point, Mike was being moved in a particular direction to maintain that aura of invincibility. But I always knew what his kryptonite was, and I always knew that Evander Holyfield was the remedy for him. My friends didn't believe me. I was saying that since the 80s when he was at cruiserweight. I said, this guy right here, he's gonna pop Mike Tyson's face off when he gets to him. And no one believed me, but I was correct with that, man. Evander's just different. Evander's just different, man. You know what else I would like to have seen? How do you think a match between Mike Tyson and Herbie Hyde would have ended up?
I think that Mike would have. I think he would have gotten to Herbie Hyde. Herbie Hyde was, I think, good. Had that impressive physique and everything like that. But I think that Mike just would have been too hard hitting, too fast, too aggressive for him. But it's funny. A lot of people do ask me, how do you think, and these are younger people who didn't see Ali at his very best. And they'll say, how do you think Ali at his best would have done against Tyson at his best? And to this day, I'm like, stop it.
You know what I tell him, Randy? I say Ali would have peeled Tyson like an orange.
It would have spanked him. like an uncle just, don't do that again. Come on. I mean, look. And then I saw some internet argument the other day. They said, how about Evander Holyfield at his best against Tyson at his best? Because Tyson wasn't at his best. I said, come on, give me a break. How many Evander Holyfield just had everything inside of him that could handle what Tyson was doing to him. And I don't care if they fought 10 times, Evander Holyfield just had Tyson's number. And I think that Tyson was a damn good heavyweight. He just wasn't invincible. But then show me who is. I don't know.
What is a telltale sign about the fight between Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson? The bell rings to end the first round, and Tyson throws a punch after the bell and hits Holyfield clean.
Yes.
Evander came right back with his own shot and hit Mike clean. Boom! Right. And Mike turned and looked at him and had a little smirk on his face like, oh, I guess I ain't going to be able to do that to you, huh?
And he found out later in the fight, because everything he tried, whether it was after the bell, the rough stuff on the inside, the headbutt, intentional elbows. Evander could do it right back and then some.
Yeah, he was
man with an uppercut, left 45 to the solar plexus.
Yeah. Speak about Evander as tough as he could be. I guess it was in about 1990. I'm commissioner in New York, and a friend of mine, a dentist, was making these really good mouthpieces for fighters. And Evander wanted one of them. So I said, why don't you come out, sleep over my house, and the next morning, we'll leave nice and early at 7 o'clock in the morning. We'll go to the dentist. He'll make you one of those mouthpieces. He said, great.
Was that the mouthpiece that has the hole in the center?
Yeah. And you can bite down on it.
Yeah.
And still, your jaw locks.
Yeah.
And you can still breathe. 5 kids, 4 daughters, 1 son I have. And I told all of them, say nothing to anybody, any one of your friends. It's just us and Evander here tonight. So shh. The next morning, Evander and I woke him up at about 6:15. We had a little breakfast. He jumped in the shower. We had some breakfast. We go to the door, and as I start to open the door, I look outside. Every kid in school is on the front lawn. I said, Evander, I don't know what to say to you, but he said, what's the matter? And then I said, look out the window. He looks out. Hundreds of kids are there. I screamed for all of our kids. I said, get down here now. 4 girls, the boy, they all line up. I said, look outside. They look out. I said, who is responsible for this? All the girls looked at Mikey and they go, I said, okay, we'll deal with this later. Evander goes, don't even worry about it. And we walked outside. The kids were going. But I said, look, we have a very important meeting we have to get to. How about we all take like
a group picture or something? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They got on the step. He got like on the bottom, and they all surrounded him. And click, click, click. We took a few shots. Then I developed it, and I put up like I had hundreds of those developed to make sure every kid got a photo.
Right.
And I mean, that's this other side. I just love, to this day, I love Evander Holyfield.
I'll tell you something, Randy. He's my favorite fighter.
Yeah.
I picked a good one, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yes, you did. And I mean,
my favorite fighter.
They just really don't make guys like that anymore. Just everything about him. And that road rage commercial that he's in? You ever see that?
Yeah.
Great. Well, my wife and I were down in Miami at a convention, a WBC convention that Evander was at. And we were sitting at breakfast one morning with Evander, and that PSA had just come out. And I said, Evander, how many takes did you do that in? He said, take a guess.
1.
I said, 10. He said, no, come on. 20? He goes, no. You were closer the first time. I said, 5. He goes, and you were right, 1. Mm-hmm. And then they couldn't believe that it was so perfect that they had them do it a few more times, and nothing was as good as the first one, where the guy it's like banging on the, get out of your car. Oh. So I asked Evander, can we do that same thing? So he stood up, and I'm like this. And I'm like, we couldn't have taped ours because we were laughing so hard. And then at one point during the breakfast, he looks at my wife and he said, are you staring at my ear?
Yeah.
And she said, yeah. He said, well, where are you looking? She goes, isn't it like right here? He said, no. It's up here. And you can see the indent, he's missing that little chunk. And she goes, oh. He goes, everybody stares at my ear.
Now, Randy, did you see that live? Was you in attendance, or was you watching that at home or something? Did you see that live? The infamous bite?
I saw it live, but I wasn't at the arena that night. No.
What was your reaction when you realized what happened?
Well, it really didn't. It didn't surprise me because I knew that Tyson really was off the rails at that point. Because only a few years before that, I had been commissioner when he was champ, when he won the championship, when he was going through his stuff with Robin Givens and Don King. I held a hearing with them, but I knew what was going on. So, and I knew that the first fight, I spoke to Evander about it. Evander said I gave him back what he always tries to do to others. And I wasn't going to put up with that. So I wasn't surprised that he did that, but he was truly off the rails at that point. And remember everything with the Lennox Lewis fight, I'm going to eat your children. And
yeah, that was some crazy stuff.
Do you guys mind if I share something about that?
Go ahead.
Since we got Randy here who knows Mike and Evander. In the second fight, I'm sitting with guys from my gym in my living room. We're watching it on pay-per-view. And the bell rings to start the second round. And they're getting into it, and they're kind of working on the inside a lot. And Evander's like pushing Mike into the ropes and going to work on him a little bit.
Right.
And Mike is looking over to the referee, Mills Lane. You know, he's like complaining and stuff. And I told the guys I'm sitting here watching the fight with guys from my gym. I said, hey guys, Mike is coming apart mentally. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, I've never seen him in his 30-something fights at that time look to the ref and stuff like that in a complaining manner. I said, Evander's manhandling him, and I've never seen Mike allow somebody to manhandle him. I said, he's coming apart mentally. He's losing it. And they was like, man, we don't see what you see. But remember, I told you I'm a trainer. Now I'm watching these things. The bell ends the second round, and Mike turns slowly to go back to his corner, but he gives Holyfield this stare. And he slowly walks back to his corner with his mouthpiece kind of sticking out of his mouth. But I could tell he's like a switch, click. When he comes out for the third round, he comes out without his mouthpiece. They had to call time in the action for him to go back for Richie Giacchetti to put the mouthpiece back in his mouth. A few seconds later, he bites Holyfield on the ear. And chaos and everything, you know, the ref calls time. You know, he tells Tyson, look, you bit his ear. That's a 2-point deduction. You do it again and you're out. They continue. The fight resumes because they were going to stop it, but Evander wanted to continue and everything. The bell ends the round, and Holyfield goes back to his corner, and he tells Don Turner and Tommy Brooks, he bit both my ears. and then they called Mills Lane over and say, look, Mills, he bit both of his ears. And then that's when Mills went back over. He was like, look, you're done. And they thought he was saying Holyfield was done. They thought that Holyfield had quit. And Richie was like, he quit, Mike, he quit. And Mike stood up and he was like, no, you're done. You're disqualified. And that's when the chaos took off. But I told those guys, I'm sitting in my living room, we're watching the fight on pay-per-view. They was like, man, how did you know? I said, how could you not? What are you looking at? I can tell you what I'm looking at. But it was one of those things. Now, I'm asking you, Randy, because you're a person that's close to the sport. You know these fighters and everything. What do you think about my assessment of what I told? And I'm sitting there live watching this thing.
That is absolutely on the money, perfect. But I'm just going to add something to that. And this comes from my incredible friendship with Mark Ratner, which lasts today. Mark is one of my best friends. And as soon as that was going on, that night, I'm on the phone with Mark. And he was like, can you believe this went on? I said, okay, what happened? after the first bite, and Evander is jumping up and down. You got up on the ring apron and you called Mills Lane over. And, you know, like they do it in baseball, when they get on the mound, they now go like this. So nobody could read their lips. So I said, you huddled with Mills Lane and you covered your mouth and everybody was trying to read your lips. But what were you guys saying? Mills said, I'm going to DQ him. And Mark said, I get it. And we will back you up. We, being the commission, will back you up if you DQ him for doing that. But Evander already says he wants to continue. And I just think that if we stop it now, there's just going to be a lot more said. That if you let it go, you go over, you can do what you want, take a point, take 2 points, do whatever you want. Go over to make sure that Evander does want to continue. You're not forcing him back in there. So he did that, and he said, and then after you hear from Evander, then you could make your assessment. If you want to stop it, I'm behind you. But if you want to let it go, you know, you just tell Tyson, anything like this again, you're out of here. And that's what that little huddle was there. And then they did let it go, and you know what happened. So it was very easy for Mills Lane at that point to end the fight. And he sold it because he went over to Tyson and he sternly, like, and everybody could see, and everybody was probably saying, you do that again. So they knew that after the next one, and Evander once again is jumping around up and down. Yeah. You knew that Tyson was.
A lot of people forget that there was a second bite. They forget it.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't realize, when Tyson lost the title to Buster Douglas in Tokyo, he was already off the rails. He was fighting with Don King. He was fighting with Robin Givens. Now, keep this in mind. He's got two best friends, he thinks. One is this fight promoter, Don King. One is his wife. He loves her. He truly loved her. She doesn't like Don King. Don King doesn't like her. Don King is whispering in one ear, Mike, you got to get rid of this bitch. She's after your money. She's whispering, Mike, darling, I love you. Don King only wants your money. Perhaps they were both telling him the truth. He didn't want to hear it from his two best friends, from the woman he loved and the guy that he loved and trusted. They're both telling him that the other one is poison. If that don't mess a guy's mind up, nothing will. And from all of that, he became totally unglued. And I mean, that whole thing, and I've said this publicly before, and I'm going to continue to say it till my dying day. I was in the courtroom for his trial with Desiree Washington.
Oh, man.
Mike is innocent. Mike is innocent of all charges there. All charges. He told me what went on. And she was not raped. She was not beaten.
No.
It's that when they were done with their 3:00 in the morning escapades and she wanted to go to sleep, Mike says, well, I'm sleeping alone. And he'll see ya.
Go out, you get out. Yeah.
And she's like, what? And she goes, okay, we'll see about this. And she went back into the bathroom, gets all dressed, comes out all nice. She goes, now, Mike, see me now? Messes her hair up, rips open the blouse, goes downstairs, calls a cab. Help, help, help. I just was raped by Mike Tyson. The cab takes her to the hospital where, of course, they take pictures of her and swab her. And his DNA is all over her.
I bet.
I'm sitting in the courtroom for all the testimony, and several times Mike looked over at me, and she's all buttoned up, and she's on the stand, and I just went to his room for an autograph, and you go to somebody's room at 2:30 in the morning.
2:30 in the morning.
Yeah, hello. So the jury is sitting there wiping their eyes, listening to this poor little girl tell her story. Mike looks over at me. I'm sitting there. He's going,
done.
And
Done.
I knew it because I knew what his story was. And remember, he told me, do I believe his story? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Because once upon a time, we were never in Tyson's shoes of that kind of fame. But we've been through stuff like this. And or know people that have. Tyson was innocent of that. In fact, Mike once, he has said, not just to me, but he said to others, I've done stuff that I should have been arrested for, but I wasn't. And the one thing that I was arrested for, I didn't do. And I will always believe that.
Yeah. Can I add one thing to that too? Let me add one thing. So your friend, Pedro Fernandez, I'll mess with you, Randy, but Pedro told me, because Pedro likes to read the court things because he's a former police officer. He told me that he read the case and that she was on her menstrual cycle as well. So that's another reason why he didn't believe that Mike Tyson did it too. She was on her period. So because they found I guess they found it, in the evidence in the panties or whatever. But yeah, that was another thing that was part of the case in the court documents.
Wait, Pedro believes it that he did it, or
no? Didn't he believes that he didn't do it because he read the court case? He said, and that was another thing that nobody really speaks about, that she was on her menstrual cycle. So
you know what? The evidence is there, of course, because when she was in the hospital, in the emergency room, and they're swabbing her and she's got marks on her and this and that and DNA. It all points not to any one of us, but to Mike Tyson. So that was the evidence. But the evidence was there because they had mutual relations that night. It wasn't forced upon her. So, I mean, I've seen a few interviews where, and you can actually call some of these interviews up, where I think he was in Canada. Mike was in Canada. He was supporting a guy who was running for mayor, whatever. And the host of the show picked on Mike. And and Mike went ballistic on him. I
remember.
Right, on live Canadian television. And you know what? Good for Mike for going crazy. Yeah. Mike did not do that.
I've said a lot of things, because I cover the sport with boxing content on YouTube. I never referred to his circumstances of what he was charged for. I never referred to that. I never mentioned incarceration. I say that, he was away, and my critiques and criticism of him have been boxing related. And because especially when I see a young man like that was railroaded in the way that he had been, yes, there may have been things that he could have been arrested for that I realize that, but the one thing that I believe that he didn't do, that he was put behind bars for, I don't, and I don't even like to touch that, because it could have been any of us young guys, you know what I'm saying, or his peers or whatever. It can happen. But the one thing I will say is, as you stated, he was beginning to go off rails a few years even before that, leading up to Buster Douglas. When he bit Evander Holyfield, that's when I just totally lost the respect for him as a professional fighter and a man and a former champion. Because Evander Holyfield was the one fighter and colleague of his era that could equate to anything that you go through the annals of history when you look at Ali and Frazier, you know, and you know, like when Joe Louis and Schmeling, and you know, it's like that was his counterpart.
Yeah.
And to do something like that, you disgraced yourself.
Well,
and you disgraced the sport. And that's where a lot of the criticism, because I was like, regardless of what you feel or whatever, you still had Cus D'Amato as a mentor, and the voice of Cus never resonated with you when you needed to reflect upon it most, and that's your own doing. You see, because it's just like you have a mom and a dad who teach you a certain way or whatever, and they say they teach you don't do these things, and just before you commit that crime, just before you cross that threshold, you don't refer back and think like, am I really, I'm gonna disappoint my parents, I'm gonna do, you know, when you lose that,
yeah,
then what happens after that is supposed to happen now, because you cross a line of discipline, and a warrior should never cross the line of discipline.
I definitely hear you, but I just know, because I've known Tyson since he's about 17 years old, and I've seen him through every single stage, and we were very good friends. And then it's like Don King convinced him that I was the enemy when I was commissioner in New York, because I refused to break his contract with Bill Caton. But I know how close Tyson was, not with Caton, but with Jimmy Jacobs. Jimmy Jacobs was like, if Cus D'Amato was his father figure, Jimmy Jacobs was like that big brother. Jimmy could talk to Mike about anything. But yet, if Bill Caton tried, he just didn't have the same personality. Jimmy Jacobs connected totally with Mike. But once Jimmy died, that's when Don King saw his opening, swooped in, and he started publicly calling Bill Caton. He'd say, I spoke to Bill Satan. And then did I say Satan? I meant Caton.
Wow.
Well,
wow.
And he convinced Tyson that Caton was bad for him. And they actually did trick him into signing the contract. But I never got around to breaking the contract, which is something that the hearing that we had was the first major hearing I ever did. And things just went horribly wrong in there, because I learned a big lesson that when you're a hearing officer, you just basically put a zipper on it. And Tyson was lying to me about something that he knew. And I didn't realize at that time that as the judge, I can't become a witness. So I said, Mike, wait a minute. You're not telling me the truth, because you know that you said and blah, blah, blah. And then I showed him a picture. I said, do you remember when this picture was taken? Yeah. And then I said, and what did you say to me right after the picture was taken? And he looked. I said, I can't hear you. He said, I told you that Jimmy Jacobs was dying. I said, well, you just told this hearing that you had no idea. So you're lying. And then Tyson's attorney said, Commissioner, that's a very nice story, except these hearings are over. And I flipped the table over. I ran into the bathroom. I'm knocking over the garbage cans. And one of the attorneys came in and said, what are you all upset about? It's not your money. And I said, it's not yours either. It's his money.
It's his money.
And only a few years ago, you guys might remember, up in Canastota, it was about in 2018 at the 2018 or 19 at the International Boxing Hall of Fame dinner on Saturday night. Don King walked past Mike Tyson, and you could see this on YouTube. You could type in Tyson throws glass of water at King. And King got up there, made a long speech, and then after he got done, he walked down the dais and he went over to Mike, and he kind of puts his hand on Mike Tyson's shoulder, who picks up a glass of water that he had and flings it at King. And then King just continued to his seat. And when everybody asked Tyson that night, what just happened? He said, I'd rather not talk about it. The very next day, Jerry Cooney and I had Tyson alone. I said, Mike, I'd like to ask you about that incident last night. He said, okay, I'll answer it. And I said, like, I know that King probably took over $100 million of your money. He said, 100 million? How about 300 million? That's the night up in Canastota, New York. Tyson walks by, stops at Tyson. Tyson like flings a glass of water at him and refused to talk about it until he then spoke to Jerry Cooney and myself and said, look, and he was really, and yes, and we're asking about him here, and he said, I was wrong. But he basically said that to me just, to be big about it. But after we got off the air, he said, Randy, that man robbed me. And I said, yeah, to the tune of what, 100 million? He goes, 100 million? How about 300 million?
Oh,
would you be pissed off if somebody ripped you off for 300 million? You'd throw water at him too. So, I mean, once upon a time, he thought that King was his best friend. And look, I'm just glad that Tyson look where he's come from and look where he is now. I mean, that whole thing with Jake Paul to me was, that was Jake Paul making money for everybody that he works with. And all I know is that Tyson has a booming business out there, he's got the weed farm, a very large weed farm. He's got a very successful business, a legal business. He's making money. He's got a wife that he loves. He's got kids whom he adores. Very unfortunately, he lost his baby daughter years ago, but he truly, if you asked me years ago, where do I think Tyson would be now? I'm sure a lot of us would have said, I don't foresee a very happy ending for him. Right now, I think he's in a place where he wants to be, and I'm happy for that.
Yeah, he's beating the odds. He's definitely beating the odds, man, because, where he was going, I talked to my dad a lot. He said, he went to jail on some bullshit, but my dad said, God has a funny way of letting you know, and he said, probably at that point in his life, jail was probably the best place for him because it took him out of the way of other things that could have potentially happened. Like he said, all the stuff that he could have went to jail for, he didn't go. He went to jail for something he didn't do.
I think back, I made some very early matches for him. I was at his first, I believe, 19 fights. I was ringside for the first 19 fights of his career. I'm the only one who's living today. I think Mike Hatz might have been the other one who was at all first 19. I was at the first 19 fights, and I made about 6 or 7 of those matches. I gave the opponents to Jimmy Jacobs and Bill Caton, and they put him in with these guys. Did we know he was going to win? Yeah. Did I know he was going to win? Like send the guy across the ring with a broken jaw? No. But I was there to see every second of it, and even along the way, I saw this other side of Tyson because I used to sit, and this is going to be in Mark Kriegel's upcoming. He has 2 books coming out on Tyson, and one of the stories that I told Mark Kriegel about Tyson is that one day we watched the heavyweights. Jimmy Jacobs set up his projector with a big reel-to-reel, and we were watching movies of all the heavyweight champions. And he'd be watching Jim Braddock. He'd be watching Jack Sharkey. He'd be watching Joe Louis. And he'd say, here's how I believe I could beat them. He wasn't even a 2-0 fighter yet. And I said, Mike, do you really foresee yourself? He said, I see myself fighting every one of them. And we got to one guy, and he actually started crying. It was Sonny Liston. And I looked at Mike. He's got tears rolling down his face. And I said, Mike, why so emotional? He said, because I could never beat Sonny Liston, ever. And I said, but Mike, here we are. It's like 1982. Sonny Liston died 12 years ago. You're never going to fight him anyway. He said, but I do fight him. I fight him up here. And he pointed to his head. He said, and every time I fight him, he beats me. And do you know that I believe it's on Sonny Liston's birthday? And on the day that Sonny Liston died, I think it was December something in 1970, Mike Tyson goes to Sonny Liston's grave to put some flowers. Every year. That's how much he thought of Sonny Liston. This is a very complex guy. I mean, more than you ever know. And if you could ask me, pick one guy in the sport today to sit down with, would it be Turkey Al-Sheikh? Would it be Dana White? Or I'm going to say no. I want to spend an entire day and go over every moment that I've had in the career, me and Mike, from those days to the days that I was commissioner, when he was angry at me for perhaps not breaking his contract with Bill Caton, to like that interview you just saw, to everything that went on with Bruce Seldon and Francois Botha. I would want to spend the entire day from sunup to sundown just walking with Mike, dining with Mike, just talking to Mike. 2 boxing guys.
Mike was when I got to learn about him, I said, man, believe it or not, he's just one of those young men that lack direction. And when he had direction, he was on the straight and narrow for a long time. I really like the fact that he was a student of the game. These kids today, they don't do what Mike Tyson did, because I'm gonna transition to a guy that they put in the same sentence. This kid, Tank Davis. I almost ripped my own head off when the kid said, I don't even know who Marvin Hagler is. And then he says, oh, I know the name. I just never watched him fight. And I'll say, what is going on here?
Do you feel old when you ask some of these young guys, like, what's your opinion of Sugar Ray Leonard? Who?
They say who?
Who?
And you're lucky if they know them. And then when you say Sugar Ray Robinson, they
don't even go there. Don't say Harry Greb. Don't say Joe Louis. They have no clue.
No.
Randy, I got a question for you. Mm-hmm. What was it that Kevin Rooney brought to Tyson's training that once he was no longer around, it immediately changed him as a fighter? Because you knew them when they were together, and then, of course, you knew of him when he was no longer with Kevin. What was it about Kevin Rooney keeping him fighting in a certain style and training in a certain manner and performing in a certain manner that once Rooney left, all of that left too? Can I ask you that?
That's a very good question. And do you know, I think that's the first time anybody's asked me that question. And I've always, the answer is Kevin Rooney was basically molded by Cus D'Amato. He spoke like Cus D'Amato. He used Cus D'Amato's intonations. He used his hand gestures. When he spoke to Mike, Mike heard Cus D'Amato speaking. And I will tell you that during my days as editor-in-chief of Ring Magazine, Cus D'Amato used to come up to the office maybe once every 2-3 months. And Bert Sugar and I thought he was nuttier than a fruitcake. He would say stuff. Like one day he asked me, what are you guys working on now? And I said, well, Bert can't even be disturbed because he's working on a story on the death of Willie Klassen. And that took place, I believe, in the Garden in 1979. And he goes, well, what about the death of Willie Klassen? What does that have to do with boxing? And I said, Cus, he got killed in the ring. And he said, let me teach you something right now. Nobody has ever been killed in the ring. Nobody. And I said, of course they have. And he said, it was a pre-existing condition. And I said, wait, Cus, are you going to tell me that Benny Kid Paret, and he stops me right there, Benny Kid Paret had damage done in sparring, and he had it done by Gene Fullmer. He should have never been in a ring against Emil Griffith. He wouldn't have died if he didn't get in the ring that day. Nobody's ever been killed in boxing. I said, of course they have. And he was throwing things around the office. He scared my secretaries. One of them started crying and went in the back. Bert and I, and to this day, I mean, I thought Cus was nuts. But yet, when he spoke to Rooney, when he spoke to Tyson, whatever he told them, and I used to listen to some of those. I'd be sitting in the back of the gym, and he'd say, when you keep your hands like this, I want you to rock side to side. Don't do this. I want you to tick-tock, 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 back and forth. Bend the knees. And if Tyson didn't bend the knees to come down low enough, he would have a styrofoam tube and he'd smack him with it. Did I tell you to bend your knees? You're not bending your knees. If you don't bend your knees, you're going to get hit. You bend your knees, you're not going to get hit. And especially in those early fights, I mean, it was amazing to see the stuff that Tyson would do. I had never seen that stuff done before. And then when Kevin Rooney took over as Cus was very ill and then left us, he was almost like the incarnation of Cus D'Amato. And that was the connection right there until finally when Don King got in there and he really, because he didn't like Bill Caton. And I used to tell Kevin Rooney, you gotta try to smooth it out because Bill Caton is the poison here. Tyson doesn't want to be with him, but he wants to be with you and he wants to be with King. And Kevin said, he will never be with King as long as I'm here. And then that wedge was driven between them. And I guess all these years later, I see that, you know, I understand what Don King was doing, but I understand everything about the whole business side of it, that he wasn't the best thing at all for the psyche of Mike Tyson.
Wow.
So
My
you're
God.
thinking that I want to make sure I'm getting you clearly, because you're the closest person that I could speak to when I ask the question that I asked. So you're thinking it's the resonance of Cuss's uh, uh, diction, his expression, and everything, that Rooney was able to channel that to him.
Yeah.
And then once Rooney was gone, it kind of just
that's where things
away.
started. Yeah. Then everybody start coming on, the John Horns and this one and that one and this one and that one. And but none of them were Customato. To this day, if you was sitting with Mike Tyson and you said, tell me about Customato, he may start crying while he's with you. He gets that emotional. But Kevin Rooney was the closest thing to Customato. His hand gestures, his speech patterns, everything he said, he was like a tape recorder spitting it back exactly as Customato said.
Now, when Tyson fought Lennox Lewis, after the first round, he goes back to the corner and he tells Ronnie Shields, he hurt me, Ronnie. The corner mics picked this up. Lennox had caught him charging and rushing in with an uppercut, a right uppercut, that rocked Mike. And he goes back to the corner and he tells Ronnie Shields, who was training him for that fight, he hurt me, Ronnie. I was like, wow. I had never heard him speak about being hurt in the ring. Never. And then a little bit later, when a couple of the cuts had opened up, it was got old scar tissue, had opened up, and he was being treated for it, and they were putting a press up against it, and I heard him say, ah! I'm like, man, how far this guy is from where he used to be. It's like it was almost like watching when Ali fought Larry Holmes. It's like, because that wasn't Ali in there against Larry Holmes. It was
right,
not even a shell of the man.
And it wasn't Larry Holmes against Mike Tyson years later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I actually did the blow-by-blow for. It's funny. I did the blow-by-blow working with Bone Crusher Smith on that on the National Black Network. So, I mean, but, I speak to Larry Holmes about that. He said, I did that for the money. He said, you and I both know I didn't belong in there. I said, I know, but it hurt me so bad. Larry and I are just so close. I went to his professional debut and went to just every one of his fights. And to this day, Larry Holmes and I, who were both 1949 babies, he calls me on my birthday. I call him on his birthday. And
tell us why Larry and Big George didn't fight in their later portion of their careers when they were 40-plus-year-old men and they were whooping on these young guys. Tell us about that.
1979, they were going to be fighting each other. 1979, I'm sorry, 1999, they were going to be fighting each other. They were going to both be 50 years old that year. Yeah, it was 1999. Wow. And I had convinced Larry, I said, George Foreman doesn't really want to fight you. He used to tell me that the one guy he wouldn't want to fight is you because that jab of yours would run him ragged. I said, Larry, can I work with you just because, we're all 1949 babies and I'll be able to get so much publicity out of it. I'll do publicity for both of you guys. And Larry said, yeah. And then as it was getting close and they were both in training, the guy who was going to be coming up with the money for the fight, and I forgot what that guy's name, he just couldn't come up with the funds and the fight fell apart. But they were going to do it. But Larry was the one who really wanted it. George didn't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a problem for Big George.
One more story about Big George, and this is a story that's going to be in my next book, which I'm finishing up on, called Glove Story. Is I'm the one who put into George Foreman's mind coming back.
Really?
Yeah, we were down in Houston, Texas, and it was 1985, and I was doing the blow-by-blow. George Foreman was doing the color. Mm-hmm. And there were two heavyweights, 4-rounders in the ring, and we're announcing the fight. But as we're announcing the fight, George is sitting next to me going like this. And he's boxing with them. And I said, I wish everybody could see George Foreman. And they actually put the camera on him. And I said, I bet you, George, you could get in there right now with either one of these guys. And you've been off since 1977. You've been off for about 8 years now. I bet you could get into the ring right now with either one of them and beat them. And he's, oh no, Randy, you're being too kind to me. I'm a big old minister now. I weigh a lot more than I did when I was fighting. And he weighed about 350 at the time. But when we wrapped up, he said to me, you gave me an idea, like IDER. So I said, what kind of idea? He said, give me your number. I'm going to call you tomorrow. Yeah. So I gave him my number. And in 85, we didn't have cell phones. At least I didn't. And I gave him my home number. Early the next morning, I left Houston back for Long Island. And it was later in the day, around dinner time, that my phone rings. It's George Foreman. He said, remember I told you about this idea? Mm-hmm. I said, yeah. He said, I decided to see what I got left. Wow. So I went to the local army base, and they knew me, so they let me in. And I said, do you have base boxers here? Do you have a heavyweight champion? They said, yeah, we actually do. And they called him in, and they went to the gym. They put on the gear, and George moved around for a couple of rounds with the guy. I said, how'd you do? He said, I actually did very well. I mean, I was huffing and puffing, but he said, I decided that I am going to come back.
Wow.
Now, this is like late in the year. He said, I'm going to have to lose a lot of weight. And then when he decided that the weight was off, now he's going to announce his fight. He said, I'm going to invite you to the press conference. I will fly you down. What day? Oh my God. That night, George, I got to be doing a fight on the MSG network.
Right.
And he said, okay, but I'll mention you at the press conference. The press conference comes and goes, and then he has his pro debut, if you will, the comeback in 87. And he invited me down to that. Guess what? I was on the USA Network live that night. And we were getting like a live feed, and we were telling everybody that the fight is on. George Foreman's coming back. And he wins the fight. And then there starts that new career of George Foreman. And then, of course, the George Foreman grill. And when the George Foreman grill came out, I get a package in the mail. It's a small George Foreman grill. A couple days later, there's another package, huge. It's a large George Foreman grill. And do you know, it was like in one of those things lasted me for the longest time. Mm-hmm. And I think it was in one move that one of them broke in a move and the other one just disappeared. I guess the guys wanted to help themselves to a George Foreman grill. And then a couple of years ago, on my 70th birthday, he sent me another one.
Wow.
So I still use the George Foreman grill. So it's going to be in my book, and I'm calling it the greatest comeback of all time.
It's one of the most American stories.
Oh, it is.
Ever. And
do you realize when in that first career of his, he was so ornery, so nasty.
Yep.
None of the members of the media liked being with him. When he beat Joe Frazier for the second time, it was at the Nassau Coliseum, minutes from where I live.
My dad went to that fight.
Oh, really?
My dad he attended that fight when he beat Joe Frazier. Gotcha.
So Gil Clancy, who was then his trainer, was one of my best friends. He was my guru. I went over to Gil. I said, any chance of me getting maybe a 5-minute one-on-one with George? Gil just looked at me and said, not a chance. He is in the most ornery, dislikable mood I've ever seen him in. I don't even want to be around him. And then over the years, after his comeback, and he's been on with Jerry and I so many times, I asked him, okay, George, for me and Jerry and the large listening audience here, what was going on that made you so unlikable in your first career, and how you've turned it around to become the nicest human on this planet? I've never seen anything like it. He said, I once, when I sparred with Sonny Liston, when I was a young man sparring with Liston, he told me, you can't believe the media. You have no friends in the media. They'll only smile at you and then write and say bad things about you. And I believed him. He said, well, that was Liston. And I do have the feeling that if Liston was around today, I think the media would treat him differently. And I know that I met him one time in my life when I was about 13 years old. He could not have been nicer to me. So I wish I could, hang a little bit with Sonny Liston. But again, like I said before, more than anybody, I want to hang a full day with Tyson.
Yeah, he's not what most people think. I saw through that. I've seen some interviews where it's like, that right there, that's the guy. But he's one of those guys when you get on that bad side and he has to treat you a certain way, he goes all the way left.
I mean,
I get that about him.
Did he ever? I think about the pigeons that he used to raise.
Yeah. I can tell you some stories in the 90s when he used to show up to these clubs. But I've seen some things, I'll say that. But, it's like...
Well, he told me a story that's in my first book. And this is right from the mouth of Tyson. He said he was walking down the street, and he was about 17 years old, less than that, 15 maybe. And he's walking down the street in his Brooklyn neighborhood, and he's holding one of his pigeons, and he's stroking its head. And some tough guy from the neighborhood says, hey, kid, can I see your bird? Tyson gives the tough guy his bird. He puts his hands around the neck, breaks the bird's neck, and then hands it back to Tyson. Tyson said, I let out a scream. He said, I just went, no! He said, everybody within blocks heard me. He said, I put the dead bird on the ground and I proceeded to rain punches on this guy from every angle. And he went down with one of the first shots I hit him with. And I just leaned over him and I kept hitting him over and over and over. He was bleeding from his ears, from his eyes, from his nose, from his mouth. His teeth were mangled. And I leaned over and I said, you're going to probably die here. But if you don't, make sure I never see your face again, because if I do, I'll kill you next time. I mean, when he told me that story, I'm wiping tears from my eyes. He said, and he was getting watery when he was telling me that story. There are many, many different sides to Mike Tyson. And there's an especially nice side. And that's the one that I just so love.
Yeah, he's definitely not what people make him out to be.
No.
And I can tell that when I did see him in quote unquote action in the club scene, dare I say, it was more of a persona he felt he had to maintain. You know what I mean? And his entourage enabled a lot of the bullshit.
Yeah.
There's a story that Fat Joe the rapper told that was absolutely true, because he goes to a club and Fat Joe's standing outside with a couple of his friends, and he comes up, hey, why are you standing outside, Joe? He says, oh, they said they put the capacity, we can't come in. 6'6" bouncer, 400-pound guy. You gonna let Joe in? You're gonna let my guys in? Mike Tyson is chasing this 6'5" bouncer around park cars. Now, I didn't know the guy, but I knew someone who knew the guy, and I knew about that story before Joe told the story about maybe 15 years later. But I knew about the story when it happened. And I said, man, when Mike Tyson's chasing these guys in between parked cars, it was crazy. But his entourage was laughing about it. So, Mike had to wear multiple hats.
Yep.
But when you catch Mike and he's calm and you talking, that's Mike Tyson.
Yes.
That's Mike Tyson. And it's sad because he was so talented. And then, the vultures come and they come and they take advantage. You know what I mean? And he's been done dirty. And I'm glad that he's around, because normally guys like that, they don't have a good ending in life, man. It's just not good. So I'm happy that he made out, man.
When I was commissioner, and in 1990, when he was coming off the rails, as we talked about, all I could foresee 10, 15, 20 years down the road was Mike being behind bars forever. I did not picture that he would be living a life that he had never really dreamed of, with a wife and a family and being a loving father and everything that you couldn't picture for Mike. And I know that he really enjoys that.
Yeah. And that's a good thing. I'm just happy that he's around now. He seems to be at peace. Again, he doesn't have the money that he was supposed to have, but he's living a good life.
Does he have 300 million, 400 million? No. Is he a millionaire several times over? Yeah.
Yeah.
He lived the way he wants to? Yep.
Yeah, pretty much.
Can he do basically anything he wants to do? Yep.
Yeah.
And I know he's helped far more people than he has hurt. Tyson will basically, I think, only, when I say hurt, he won't physically hurt people, but he doesn't want to do with people who he feels have really wronged him, and the people who have done right by him. He remembers those people today. I just wish him nothing but the best. And I'm really glad we were able to spend so much time talking about Mike Tyson. I'm really sorry that the first half hour was spent trying to get me on camera.
I got one more question for you, Randy, because this is a good one. Before you leave us, not saying that you're going right now, but this is a question I just wanted to ask because of where our conversation has gone. What fighter, past, present, that you would pay to watch, because when you watch that fighter, it's like that's what boxing is to you? What fighter is that for you?
Well, being that I've seen everybody around today, whether they're fighting today or retired today, we've been talking about Tyson. I've seen just about every one of his fights, and Sugar Ray Leonard, you name it. And I've seen every frame of footage that exists on Sugar Ray Robinson. I wish I could have seen him as a 140 pounder, 147 pounder. But the guy that I always would love to get, I said that I'd love to. I did meet Sonny Liston as a kid, spoke to him. If I could get in a time machine, I would like to go back and spend time with Jack Johnson. There was a guy who came along way before his time. What he went through to be battling white America. Here's a guy who had a white wife, and they got him on this made-up charge by this politician, Mann, M-A-N-N, and it was called the Mann Act, where you couldn't be a person of color and take another woman of another color across the state line, which he did because it was his wife. But they nailed him on it, and they ran him out of the country. And I will say this. The one thing that I've seen Donald Trump do that I could stand up and applaud is that he exonerated him. He finally, he said, I am waiving that Mann Act. Forget it. It's done with. And he did what nobody else would do. Other presidents were asked about that. Donald Trump actually did that. And the reason he did it is because he's an ex-fight promoter. And I actually, back in 1984, when I met this fight promoter, casino owner, we actually spent a day together because I was about to put him on the cover of Ring magazine. We talked about Jack Johnson. And he said, can you believe how he's been railroaded? And of course, back in 84, did we know that he was going to be president one day? And he signed a bill that freed Jack Johnson from that ridiculous Mann Act. Man, I would love to hang out with Jack Johnson.
A lot of people forget Donald Trump is a huge fight fan.
Oh,
and, it was Atlantic City was responsible for a lot of that stuff.
That's why I'm wondering if this new TKO Fight League, which is going to be run by Turki Al-Sheikh and Dana White and Nick Khan from the WWE, you've got to remember that Dana White is best friends with Donald Trump. Yep. I don't know what that means for the TKO Boxing League, but I truly believe that the TKO Boxing League is going to do things in the sport of boxing that perhaps have never been done before. I think it's all going to be positive. And I think one thing is you may still see the WBC, the IBO, the IBF, and all the rest. But I think because Turki Al-Sheikh owns Ring Magazine, and as the former editor of Ring Magazine, I would love to see only Ring Magazine's ratings be used. As a matter of fact, on my Sirius XM shows now, I don't say he's a WBA champion or whatever it is, but I say he is the Ring Magazine champion. And actually, of the 16 rated divisions, they only rate champions in 7 divisions. 9 of them,
thank God,
are vacant because when they do have a champion, it's the lineal champion because they beat the man who beat the man who beat the man, so forth and so on. And in 9 of those divisions, that doesn't exist. And, here it is. The WBO is now demanding that Alexander Usyk, the guy that we're looking at as champion, well, you got to fight Joseph Parker. The WBA said, you don't have to fight anybody for the next 2 years because of everything that you've done. You fought Fury twice, and you fought Daniel Dubois. You don't have to fight any mandatory. So they're saying no. WBO says you got to fight Joseph Parker, and they're going to wind up stripping him of the title. And here we go again. 1 heavyweight champion, 2 heavyweight champions, 3 heavyweight champions, and there's going to be more champions than contenders.
And this is why we have a mess. This is why we have a mess now. Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was saying, speaking of Dana White, he was at the Garden today. Somebody just told me that he was at the Garden, and Kalen Walsh first round knockout. So that was it.
And you see, this is
because of Dana White.
Yeah.
This is why, boxing, like the supporters like my father, they came up in the 60s, 70s, 80s. That I got into it in the 80s, you know what I mean? And by now he says, there's too many belts, I can't keep up. There's too many divisions, and he said, what the hell is a junior welterweight? What is that? Is that a super middle, a super welterweight? It's too many. So I like what TKO is doing it, right? Lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight. I think are they skipping cruiser? They doing that, right? There's no cruiserweight.
I don't know. See, I haven't read yet that they're going to do away with a lot of the junior titles. I don't know.
I think so, Randy. I was saying earlier that I don't want to say too much about it because I'm not really supposed to say, but somebody that I know was offered a contract to sign with TKO, and it's for a 6-rounder, and he fights at 130, which is
the junior lightweight.
Featherweight. So they told him, super lightweight. They told him that he would have to move up to 135. So that they're getting that I think they're getting rid of that division. So it sounds like all the super weights is getting So
it's funny. As a guy who in the amateurs, I fought at 118 and then 122. And I could tell you there's a big difference in 122, 126, and 130. The guys just naturally are a little bit bigger. It's one thing if you're 225 pounds and you fight a guy who's 245, okay. But when you're 130 fighting a guy who might be 138, look at when Gervonta Davis fought Leo Santa Cruz a few years ago. It was like Leo Santa Cruz was a splinter in there against Gervonta.
See, I didn't have to say anything. See, you see, you see. Now the word we got, Randy, was Tank entered that ring on fight night, literally like over 20 pounds heavier than Leo Santa Cruz, and it showed.
Yeah. Well,
it's like that was a horrible knockout. He knocked him out of his sneakers, man.
Oh, and I mean, he fought once since then, came back with a lackluster decision a few years ago, and never really announced his retirement. But we know that the terrific Leo Santa Cruz will never fight again. But I do think that the TKO League is they're going to revolutionize this sport. I believe that. So,
do you think that we're going to get closer to fighters having a pension or some kind of medical care?
Do they have pensions right now in the UFC?
I don't follow the UFC, so I couldn't say.
I don't think so. I think everything is basically, because if they're going to do it in boxing, then they're going to have to bring it into the UFC. And I think if all this time they don't have pensions, I'm just not sure how they would do that. What if a guy comes out of the Olympics with a gold medal and everybody agrees that he's going to be the next big thing, and then he has 1 or 2 pro fights and then perhaps shatters his jaw or his hand, and he needs massive surgery and can never fight again. Well, did he fight enough to get a pension? I don't know the answer to that.
I think that if this is just be an idea, I work for the city in New York. So how it's done is it's something called you have to be vested. If you get a decade in, you have time vested, and depending on what your pension plan is, age and things like whatever tier you're in, you have 10 years in, you're vested. When you retire, once you hit a certain age, whatever you have, whatever your pension plan is, you can start collecting from it. So if boxing, I know they do that in the NBA and the NFL, depending on what kind of contract you sign. It's all on an individual basis. If boxing, if I was to put my 2 cents in, I would say 2 years. You get vested, and you put into your own pension.
In 2 years, there are guys who fight once or twice,
and that's the problem.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Dana White gonna put these guys to work. These guys in the UFC, every time I turn around, there's a pay-per-view. You know, so I mean,
I don't know the answer to that. I just think that if they do it in boxing, they're going to have to do it with the UFC, with mixed martial arts. But you know, we'd all like to see it, and maybe, just maybe, there is some way you will see it. I don't think so. I think they're interested in signing the best fighters, making the best fights, having the 2 best guys mix it up. And then if the second best guy can't make it, it'll be the best guy against the 3rd guy. And it might be the 4th against the 5th guy. They're going to put on cards only, I think, with the best. If you believe you're the best, fight the best.
Correct.
And I think that's what we're going to see. And I think those guys are going to get paid handsomely. And that, you know, maybe they'll be steered, because there are certain programs that you can invest your money in.
Yeah. And
fighters who get paid $2,500 can't afford to go putting in any kind of pension plan. But if you're making $250,000 a few times a year, then there just might be a way to do it. I would love to see it. I just think they're going to revolutionize the sport in many ways that maybe we can't even think of right now.
Well, I agree with it, because to be honest with you, Randy, I've been sick of how boxing is being ran. There's too many divisions. There's too many belts.
I agree. Too many belts.
I remember I was at a presser last year, a Charlo Canelo presser right here in New York, and I asked Steve Espinoza. I asked him. I said, I asked him about the franchise status, and he said, you know, well, he heard that they're getting away with, they're getting rid of it. And I said, well, Steven, the franchise status is one of the reasons why we didn't get Jamal Charlo, the older Charlo, versus Canelo Alvarez. It's the other reason why we didn't get Devin Haney versus Lomachenko when we were supposed to get it, right? And now you're telling me that it's gone. And right now, it's vanished. There was 3 of them, and it vanished. And it did just enough to thwart some fights that we were looking forward to seeing. So when a company like, and no one saw this coming, you know, this Turkey Al Sheikh situation is the worst case scenario for all of those sanctioning bodies. Because they were doing anything they wanted to do. What happened with Michael Fox when he fought that guy, the WBA, and he whooped on his ass. And first of all, dude, what's the guy's name? It began with a C or whatever. He come to the ring with skin gloves. The ref caught it. I don't know how he got out the locker room. The commission signed off on it. Then Michael Fox whoops his ass and he gets robbed. Then he writes a letter, and then the WBA responds to him, "We've investigated ourselves. We found no wrongdoing." And that was the end of that. And then the WBA, the lady Gloria Martinez, she was caught in some racist stuff. It was a slap on the wrist. So these sanctioning bodies were spitting in our face. The WBC, again, Mauricio Silly Man is what I call him. That guy really grinds my gears. What was it? The Franchon Cruz Desert versus Alejandro Jimenez. We were asking him, man, look, was Jimenez drug testing? And he fired back at the community saying, hey, man, y'all just bullying her because she's gay. We was like, no, she got traps bigger than mine. We just asked him, was she drug tested? And come to find out, there's a problem right there. She was trying to grow a whole penis. She was going through a sex change.
Yeah.
So technically, Francois Cruz Desiree was in there with a man. You know, and it goes on and on with the WBC.
I love Francois. She is one of my favorite guests. And one time I had her on, and she was joking about that. I said, Francois, I'm watching you fight her, and the stuff that was said on Sirius XM was just, it was one of my favorite interviews. She just, reminds me, I got to get her back on again. She's that funny and that good.
Yeah, that was a disservice when we found out.
Yeah.
You know, when we watch these fights, we just want to watch it hoping that all the field is just level.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then when you find out that there's some foul play, it's like, wow, man. Because we don't want to deal with it, because then we get on our platforms and we say, look, this is where we're getting. And then that's when the foolishness comes. You know, you got these unconditional fans, you know, that love their fighter that got caught on drugs unconditionally. And then, you know, we deal with the racist stuff and all of this other craziness. We're like, look, this is the word we're getting with, you know, like for instance, this Ryan Garcia thing. I mean, the kid got caught, man. The kid got caught. And he failed a drug test, man.
If I was commissioner in New York, I would have hit him with more than a 1-year suspension.
See?
I mean, I know I would have. And before the suspension came down, they were asking me, how long do you think you should be hit with? I said, minimum 2 years.
At minimum. At minimum.
But how about this, Randy? How about this? He cheated. Okay, there is proof and evidence of him cheating, taking an illegal IV and everything on camera. But why is Haney being villainized?
I don't understand. Here's my answer: Jack Johnson, Muhammad Ali. Why wouldn't Devin be villainized?
Why is Ryan headlining this Fatal Fury card coming up in April?
Man,
why is he the main eventer? Why is he coming off of a suspension headlining?
Ryan Garcia is fighting on the card in May in New York City.
That's what I meant, May. I'm sorry.
Yeah, those 3 fights. Devin Haney's in one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Garcia's in another. And who's the third one?
Teofimo.
Oh, Teofimo was in a very good fight against Anthony Barboza.
Mm-hmm.
I like all 3 fights. I don't get it. I mean, I thought that Devin Haney really, I always thought he had a lawsuit. He was getting hit with a guy who took steroids that's known to give you added strength and punching power, endurance. I mean, it's ridiculous. There was a fighter that got suspended the other day for 2 years, former featherweight champion, and the drug that he took basically helps you heal quicker. You know, you go to the gym, you work out, you're sore all over. You take this and it just speeds up
your muscle faster.
Yeah. I don't get that when Ryan Garcia, who was also acting so crazy going into that fight against Haney, I'm not even sure that I would have allowed the fight to go on, because I thought he was downright nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, they are letting him fight New York, same place that suspended him. You know, I'm wondering about that card. I think it's going to be free. I don't know how they're going to do this.
I'm not going. I live out here. I'm not going.
If they have a media section and they have a media seat for Randy Gordon, I'm going to go. But if they think that there's not going to be a media section, and I'm going to go stand amongst the crazies, just stand out there and like I did in college for New Year's Eve, that ain't happening.
Can I tell you something, Randy? Here's why I'm not going. I'm a New Yorker. I know my city.
Yeah.
That fight is going to be on a Saturday?
Friday.
Yeah.
A Friday. Every goon in the 5 boroughs, including Staten Island, are going to meet there because every person they think they have a problem with, they think is going to be there. That's going to be the place to be. I am not going. I know better.
He thinks it's going to be like the Warriors.
It's going to be, yeah. I'm not going. I'm not going.
You know what? You're making me think about it. I am going to put in for a press seat, but I have no idea. You know, if I hear that I got a press seat, I do want to be there for the event that it is. But when you put it like that, maybe I'll just sit here and listen to Jim Lampley make his return.
That's the best you can do at this point because I don't trust it. I don't trust. And this is going to, I want y'all to think about this. Unless Turkey Al-Sheikh is going to pay for additional security, it's safe. It's going to be, it's safer on New Year's Eve down there.
Very safe. The only thing about it, have you ever done New Year's Eve?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I did it back like in the early 1970. I think I did it. It was so cold that night.
Oh Lord, yeah.
And I said, "Am I nuts? Where am I going to the bathroom? I want to get out of here." I was frozen. I was in pain. I watched every year since then on television. The ball drops. Night, honey. Happy New Year.
I don't stay up. I watch about 3 episodes of The Honeymooners, and I'm snoring. I'm done.
Guys, I'm looking at my computer. I got 1% left on here. I don't know what happened.
You're not plugged in. Yeah. Oh, that's okay. I'm gonna wrap it up. Randy, we gotta have you back when we get closer to these fights. We gotta have you back.
And we'll do a test beforehand to make sure everything is. I truly love you guys, and I can't wait to come back. Please have me back. I'd love to.
Absolutely.
It's been a blast, man. It's been a pleasure meeting you as well, Randy. Been a pleasure.
Randy, 2 times in 1 week. That's crazy.
Well, might be crazy, but it's great because you guys.
It is great. No, it is great.
Yeah. Randy, I'll talk to you soon.
I love my new friends here. Guys, I truly love you guys.
We'll talk to you soon, Randy. Much love. Thank you so much.
Peace to you.
All righty. Oh man, that's the commish, y'all. And we didn't even touch on it.
We only did like a quarter of what we could have spoken about. Like he had so many. I mean, he's got to come back. Absolutely.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, he is so knowledgeable. You see him down there. He knew Burt Sugar, Jim Lampley, Mike Tyson. He does a show with the gentleman Jerry Cooney, knows Larry Holmes. He's really the plug.
Yeah,
he's really the plug, man. And I'm gonna tune in because I got Sirius XM in my vehicle. I'm gonna tune in. You know, if he has a call-in show, I'll call in. You know, but this is what this is about, man. Yeah. Now you see how this was boxing talk, y'all. Yeah. This is all This is it. This is all we need to do right here.
He remembers everything. Like his memory is great. Like,
oh, there go George. You know, George, man, you gotta hop on with us when we have him back. Definitely. Yeah, man. This is all we want to do, man. This is just solid boxing talk. And I always tell y'all, man, I don't know everything. When it comes to guys, you know, y'all see how Stormy and him connected, right? I saw that, right?
Yeah.
So see, that's the part where you just sit back and listen. You sit back and listen.
That was a great question with the with Tyson's trainer. Like that was awesome. Like, I mean, that was great. And then he said, "Wow, nobody ever asked him that." That was great.
Stormy,
Drew,
can I make a suggestion?
What do I always say, Drew?
You always say that. Stormy, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
The next time you and Scrapbook do a live, 2 wise men featuring a guest, and I think Randy will fit right in.
Oh man, that would. And I believe Scrap knows Randy. I think he knows him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Scrap has a lot of contacts, man. So all I need to do is give him a holler, and we could set something up quite easily.
Yeah, I'm gonna text Randy, and if it's okay, I'm gonna give Randy your phone number.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give Randy your phone number, and wow, man, this is great.
He's so friendly too, and you know he really After the end of my life, he said, "Give my number to whoever. Give it that way." Like he doesn't even care. Like I was like,
Good
I wouldn't.
Right off the bat, he's a genuine person,
Yeah,
man.
he really
That's
is.
just wonderful. That's
Yeah.
just wonderful,
Yeah. And
see,
you know
that's
what?
we need, because we do genuine boxing coverage. It's like, even though some people may not necessarily think or see it that way, but you saw once we got to cooking, this is what it is.
Yeah.
We touched on things, that he may go somewhere else and they never even get a chance to give him the opportunity, because we let him talk. We let him
talk.
That's
right.
Share.
That's right.
And for to see like the love he has for Mike, I mean, he has general love for Mike, man. I'd never heard anybody like speak about Mike the way he spoke about Mike. Like he generally has love for him.
And one thing we all agree, Mike got a raw deal.
Yeah.
Say what we want. Boxing is one thing, but
300 million.
300 million. He got a raw deal with Don King and with that Desiree Washington smut. I will never forgive her for that, man. But life is what it is, and Mike is exactly where he's supposed to be right now. I'm just glad he's not dead in jail, because usually that's the ending for guys like that, man. But man, I am really like, I feel like I had a full meal, and we didn't even get to any of the stuff, like a lot of the stuff that we could have. That's why we got to have him back, man. We got to have him back, man. This is.
It would have been good to talk about the tank. I mean, the way he said it, because I said, "All right, let me ask you again. Can you take a knee?" And that'd be not like. And he's like, and then he said, "All right, everybody listening." And he broke it down and said, "No, that is a knockdown." And he said, "That's a cool time." Like he's excellent, man. And,
Oh man, yeah, we definitely gonna have him back.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Atlantic City is doing more and more events, and he works with one of the promoters there, so he does the play-by-play for some of those fights. So maybe down the road, the next boxing. Next week is a boxing. Yeah, they got one next week, so that's too soon. But maybe the next one after that, we could go down there. We could go,
It's a couple of hours out there.
Yeah.
And you know what? If he's really gonna go to that event, I will go with Randy and provide security. That's the only way I'll go. It's the only way I'll go, because that I really don't like. When we left the Palladium, we walked. Me and Clarence, we walked, and we was like, "It's gonna be right there." And we was looking, we looking up. We're New Yorkers, man. We're looking up at the buildings. We thinking that someone could shoot somebody. We're like, "How they gonna do this here?" I'm like, you know what? I'm not coming. People get the train stations right there. Every goon in New York is gonna be. People gonna be going to this fight. You remember the intro to the Warriors? All the gangs from New York.
Yeah, that's what I said. The Warriors.
Yeah, man. It's gonna be like, man, I am not gonna do this.
But I think they're gonna load up on security. They're gonna have snipers on the, because now that's what they got now. Like even I'm serious. No, look, even at baseball, you go to Yankee Stadium, you see them. Like at stadiums, they have that now. I think that's protocol. I think they're gonna have more of it. They'll have them in the buildings and stuff. Security is gonna crazy. Now, I don't know if it's gonna be enough, but they'll have snipers and stuff to watch out for any terrorists and stuff.
Yankees game is crazy work.
Yeah, they have them in the stadium. You could see them.
Double coverage when the Bo Sox come to the Bronx. Oh, it's a wrap.
Can you dig it?
Can you count, suckers? Can you dig it? Can you dig it? I don't know, man. Look, man, if Randy's going, I can't be a sucker. I gotta go. If Randy goes, I'm gonna go.
That's the only if he gets the credential. But I don't even know. I haven't seen a form for it yet. So, but I'm sure he'll get one direct or to fill out.
I could probably,
I know.
I could probably, and if he has a problem, I'll ask. And but Randy's such a good dude, man, and we need more gems like this, man. And this is all I want. I love boxing talk. No trolling, none of this stuff. You see, when you talk real boxing, the trolls don't show up. But tomorrow I'm gonna have a conversation. They'll be here, and I'll talk. Yeah. Fucking crazy, man.
You already know.
But I'm gonna pack this one up. I'm hungry. It's windy outside. I don't know what's going on with this weather. Yes. They had snow in Chicago today, and it was 70 degrees the other day. I mean, Mother Nature need to get off her period. This is crazy work. It's ridiculous, man. Stormy, let them know they can find you, good brother.
Man, everybody can find me right out here on YouTube, man. It's Stormy B Man is the channel. That's Stormy B Man in all caps, but no cap.
Definitely. Tom's a good brother, and thank you, because this actually interview is by way of you, so I appreciate this, brother.
Oh, no doubt.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. Thanks a lot, brother.
Thank you,
brother.
No, listen. If I could share guests that would be, on a bigger platform like you guys, I think that's great. I mean, it's always fun. We all do this for hobby. Like, I know I definitely do, and just for the stories and the interactions, I think is great. I like a wrestling term, when you mark out, I mark out over this. I mark out of speaking to like other fighters and hearing the stories, so yeah, this is great, and if I could share and put them on a bigger platform, because that's what way my mind works. I want to put them on a bigger platform like Drew or somebody else, so they could get the experience and then broadcast to a bigger audience. That's my intention. So anytime, Drew, I always hit you up when I got somebody.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, definitely.
So
I appreciate
I'll
that.
try to make it happen. So it just happens. I have some connections out here, very little, and I get blessed to meet and connect with some people, so I'll share it if I can, so. But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. We'll be back, on my show, TD Sports Talk. I'm trying to do something different. I just saw the email. I'm going to wait for his response. So, Drew, you may know this name because you're in New York, you Daily News. Dick Weiss, that writes for the Daily News, columnist, basketball, college football. I'm going to try to have him Tuesday night to talk about the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be a little different. We're going to do a little college basketball. We're going to interview him, maybe do his bracket picks. So I'm really excited about that. Hopefully he says yes. I see his responses there, but I don't know if he said yes or no. So I'm hoping to have him, because Sock kind of introduced me to him and, set it up. And he said yes, but not to me. So look out for that. If you like college basketball and you want to do your brackets, I'm going to have one of the best columnists that cover college basketball on hopefully Tuesday night.
Hell yeah, man. And salute to you, and salute to Sock and BVO and D Free. You know what I mean? Yeah, man, that was a hell of an interview. When y'all had him on there, that was a hell of an interview, man. So yeah, man, this was a winner chicken dinner. You know what I'm saying? We'll be back tomorrow. Nerds on Culture, and pep talk tomorrow if I'm not too tired. You know what I mean? Go subscribe to our Patreon, the Sensei's Patreon, my Patreon, everybody's Patreon, man. Yeah. And this is all we want to do is talk about the sport. And I say the sport don't love us back, but for now, shout out to Turkey and Dana, because they're going to put people in a position where it's going to be put up or shut up. Because I really don't care about the sanctioning bodies anyway, because they've turned me off to a degree. So with that being said, I think the Queens of the Ring are on. Let's go smash their like button and like and share their videos. You know what I mean? And we'll catch you on the rebound, man. Bronx on deck.
Move! Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
You are gay.